Hey, everybody. Plant sale, May 6th at Plants and Prairies Day. By now, you probably have everything potted up and know what you're hoping to bring. And so I am going to be sending around, some people have already notified me on what they're bringing, and I have them in a list. And I'm going to send around 2 notebooks, but they're the same, and you can write in either one. There's a page for what are you bringing, and if you don't know what your list is right now, you can just put your name and your email, and I'll contact you and ask you what you're bringing when you can do that at home. But if you know already, just write it down in here. You can take one of these plant lists of what we already know we're having. If you want one, we'll put it on the website, what plants we're going to have. And there's also a place in here that you can write down if you are willing to help sell plants on May 6th. And that's it.
And
yes.
Is there a minimum number of plants of a specific species that you must have in order to donate?
Not for our sale. I mean, yes.
I was just going to say, if you want volunteer hours for master naturalist, you can count it to set up or take down, but just not actually sell the plant. But if you want to count it as volunteer hours for master naturalist, you can help set up. They'll count that.
I wonder if you could count potting up plants.
Oh yeah, the potting, you can't actually raise money for another organization, is what I was told.
What if you help us with the kid part, putting butterfly tattoos on them? And manning the info table? Because we also need volunteers for that.
Yeah.
What do we do with the plants? Do we take them straight to the bathhouse on the morning of the 6th?
Yes. And there are popsicle sticks over here if anybody needs them, so that they can mark their plants. What we do want is all the plants with a name in it. And yes, that would be wonderful. If I want any kind of name at this point.
If I'm bringing plants in a paper bag, like the grocery bag, can I just write the name on the bag?
We'll deal with it.
Well, I mean,
yes. I mean, we're going to have I'm hoping to have enough help that I can assign someone to put name and put popsicle sticks in every pot. We're going to try and.
I mean, these wouldn't be potted, they'd be clumps. So,
Well, I'll bring extra grocery bags and address labels that we can put.
Okay.
well, I don't have a problem with bags. I just wanted to know if I could label them that way.
Okay. You're talking about bringing bare root plants.
What?
Well, you're talking about bringing bare root plants.
Either with root or with clumps of dirt.
Okay. What we're going to do with those, we're not going to sell those for full price, just so you know. We're going to sell those for a way discounted price just to get somebody. Well, it's my thinking that people who don't know native plants, don't know plants, they want to go home and put that in the ground, and then they're going to forget to water it the next day, and you know, they're going to do whatever they're going to do. But we want people to be able to have the best outcome as they can. So if they haven't been potted up since April 6th and they're not well rooted, well, then they're going to be discounted. So
Okay.
Do you know the hours of it?
the official hours are 9 to
10
to 3.
I've got an old sign, and it's an old sign that I could put in my yard, so I want to put that in my yard, and I just want to make sure that the hours are right on that sign.
Fabulous.
Yeah, but I think the signs that have the hours might need to correct the hours.
Okay, I can do that too.
Because I think we
I
did
think
that.
maybe 10 to 4 on it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. We did those the first year when we did them back in teens. And then we decided, no, everybody left. Nobody stayed till 4. That's why we cut it back to 3.
Okay, well, I can black marker the 4 to
Yeah,
3.
you can just take a piece of white paper, write a 4 on it.
And anybody who's bringing plants, if you would bring them by 9 o'clock, because the buyers come at 9 o'clock. They come an hour early. And so as far as I'm concerned, I'm thinking the plant sale starts at 9 o'clock, just because you have, the speakers start at 10 o'clock. So if you're coming to and when you want to buy plants, you're going to want to buy plants before you go to see or hear the speakers.
9. We need one big burly guy for security. Don't come in here. Carol, do you want to set up earlier?
No.
Okay. Didn't mean to answer for you. Dorothy?
Hello. I am doing the publicity for Native Plants and Prairies Day, and I have a few of these beautiful little signs. And I'm wondering if anybody has a community center or library or something in their neighborhood that they could post these at. I have just probably about 6 or 7 of them. So if you want to raise your hand, I can hand them out to people. We have them at some of the libraries. I think there's one already at the bathhouse. They all have a nice QR code where people can scan it so they don't have to take it with them. So if anybody's got like an apartment complex, community center, or whatever, let me know and I'll come in and give you a handout.
Library too.
No, excellent.
And, is it appropriate to put them, say, on doors of garden centers?
If they will let you, yeah.
Yeah, they may not.
But you can, there's really going to be a lot of talks, and they're talking about native plants and plants for pollinators and things like that, just
Yeah.
beyond the prairie. So it seems like they could get extra business from it if they did post at the garden center.
At least, yeah.
And yeah, this right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So if you just raise your hand, I can give you a couple.
Thank you.
Janet, NLCP and NLCP and introduction and native plant prairie day, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, y'all know me, I usually talk about the NLCP Native Landscape Certification Program. And we have a level 1 class coming up, May 19th and 20th. Who here has not attended the introduction to the native landscape class? So just a few of you. I'm glad to see that because I know I'm preaching to the choir. But we have 40 students for this upcoming class. We can take more. This one is different because the lectures will be on Friday and the walk will be on Saturday. And usually we do a Saturday and Sunday, but since the pandemic, we've been pairing with Tarrant County to do these classes, and UTA asked them to do a Friday class. So that's why this time the lectures are on Friday. And the walks will be on Saturday morning at the Bush Native Park behind the George Bush Library on the SMU campus. As where we've been having the level 1 walks for years now. So if you are interested in taking the class, I suggest you sign up. They usually cut off registration the Monday of the class or something, but we're hoping we scheduled it for late May because we wanted to be able to sign people up at Native Plants and Prairies Day. So hopefully we'll get a big bump there because we usually, since we've been going with the Zoom format for the lectures. And we're not limited to the number of people we can have. We've had much bigger classes. So I'm hoping we'll get more students. Yes.
Years ago, I've lost the certificate, who knows where it is, but are they gonna be recording those lectures?
We record them, but I don't think they make them available. So, but the class really hasn't changed. Talk to me. We can, if you need a refresher, we can probably accommodate it. What? Oh, okay.
Somebody is already taken.
Lauren?
My calendar says that level 2 is on the 10th and the 11th, which is Saturday, Sunday.
That level 2 is on on a Saturday and Sunday. It's level 1. The level 2 class filled up in 3 or 4 days. So it's full with a long waiting list. So we're not asking for more people to sign up because, yeah. But we are changing the Master Gardener demonstration garden at the bathhouse at White Rock Lake. It's still going to be a Master Gardener demonstration garden, but it's going to be a native plant garden. And we are planting it specifically for the level 2 class, putting in as many plants as we can find that will grow in our full sun environment. And, a lot of, if they're shade plants, we don't hold much hope for them. And we've got a lot of trees in the surrounding area. But so when you come to Native Plants and Prairies Day, be sure to look at our gardens, which will be ready for display if it kills me, when it just might. So any questions about NLCP? Oh, unlimited. We've when we did level 4, we had 120 people, but that was all on Zoom. So, but we don't limit those. We just schedule enough walks to handle all the people. And if you want to volunteer to help out at the walks, we certainly will welcome your participation. So just talk to me after. Okay, and now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, who has been a friend of mine for over 20 years, I think. We met kayaking at White Rock Lake. And Judy Meagher is a master gardener. And she's a master naturalist, and she's a master wellness instructor, all through the AgriLife Extension Service. So I think if they had an all-round outstanding volunteer award, which I've never heard that they do, but I think Judy would be probably the runaway winner because she contributes so greatly to each of those groups. And she's a native plant enthusiast. She's an insect. She's a bug person. She loves insects. She loves talking about insects. She loves talking to other people about it. And she loves working with kids. Unlike some of us who run as fast as we can. When that kid might only be 3 letters, but on my life, it's 4. I don't do kids. But tonight we have the pleasure of hearing Judy talk about someone we've probably, most all of you have heard of, but might not know anything about. And I am one of those people. And she's going to talk about Benny Simpson, who has provided the plants at the TDG for the Benny Simpson Garden, and also to the Herd Museum up in McKinney. And she's going to tell us all about him. So we will have a personality to put with the name and know that he's not just somebody who donated money. He worked for AgriLife, so he didn't have any money to donate. He gave something much more valuable. He gave of himself, as Judy does to her causes. So come on up, Judy.
Thank you, Janet, for that nice introduction, and thanks to all of you for being here this evening. Let me start by asking if there's anyone in here who either heard Benny speak, knew Benny, maybe met him once. Peter.
I was a friend of Benny. Benny was a real character. I don't want.
No, you're not going to take anything away.
Weirdly enough, Benny started out working on crepe myrtles.
I did not know that.
He did. I don't know his transition into native plant, but he became a specialist on the native plants of the part of the Rio Grande around Big Bend,
Mhm.
up that way. And I have many fond memories of Benny, but I'll just recount two anecdotes. One is that Benny had this small evergreen oak up at the Renner station where he worked. And he himself was not sure of the identity of it. And there was only one other person in the Metroplex who had one, and that was in Irving. But it was an intriguing oak because it would have been really valuable for residential use because of its size. The other was that he was once showing me some plants that he was working with in the greenhouse. And we came to Bushia linifolia, the flaxleaf Bushia. And I asked him, are you going to make this available? And he said, if you even whisper frost to it, it curls up and dies. So those are two anecdotes of Benny's that kind of tell you something about his personality.
Mhm. Well, thank you for sharing that. Anyone else? Anyone else? Go ahead.
Well, when I was first starting out, I was doing a school project in a school. And I went to the police station and we said, and yes, and then one thing I always remember about Benny is
I have one.
Okay.
Benny was the one who discovered Hinckley's oak. Hinckley's oak formed thickets in the Rio Grande Valley, in the upper reaches of it, that he refused to divulge the location of because it was so scarce. And it was an oak that only grew about, less than a foot high.
Oh, wow.
It was remarkable, and it's still around. The Renner station may still have some, although I doubt it. But Hinckley's oak was another of these contributions.
Interesting. So for the rest of you, you'll learn a lot about Benny this evening. When I was asked to give this talk, it was because I work as a volunteer at Texas Discovery Gardens. And I started when Roger Sanderson was still there and realized very quickly that the Benny Simpson plant collection was low man on the totem pole of what gets cared for. So it was pretty much left uncared for and was beginning to really have serious problems with vines and all kinds of nasty weeds and things. So I formed a group of master naturalists who come out on a weekly basis and help take care of that garden. However, COVID happened and we ended up taking care of all 7.5 acres. We worked through COVID because we could be outside. We could be all separated all over the place. And it's just hard to take care of everything. But anyway, so back to Benny. Everyone I talked to or met in my research about Benny Simpson thought the world of him, just like you, Peter. Said he was very generous. They were so happy to hear that we were going to keep up the garden. And I'll be talking about what we're going to do about that a little bit later. But just very, very happy to, full of gratitude that we are keeping it in front of people. Okay, so Benny was born in 1928 in the Texas Panhandle town of Northfield, which I had never heard of, and I'm assuming it's a very little town. It's next to the town of Matador, which I've also never heard of, up there in the Panhandle. And Benny was the oldest of 4 children. He has 2 brothers and 1 sister. He graduated from Matador High School and went to Texas Tech to study, of all things, journalism. Now, then, he dropped out of college to join the Marines towards the end of World War II. So he went off to do his thing there in the Marines, came home and was recalled for the Korean War. So he had a little bit of time off to probably kind of think about, what do I really want to do with my life? Do I want to do journalism, or is there something else I might be interested in? So he came home from Korea. He went back to Texas Tech, where he got his degree, a BS, in 1954, and that degree was in agronomy, which I didn't know what agronomy was. I'm a city kid from New York and Boston, so I knew what agriculture was, but I didn't know agronomy. Agronomy is the science of soil management and crop production. And he studied farm machinery. Now, where did that come from? That came from his having lived through the Dust Bowl, which took place from 1930 to 1936 over the Great Plains, the panhandles of Texas and Oklahoma, and northeast New Mexico. And his father was I don't know if he was a farmer or a rancher, but he was aware of the problems of extended drought, very high temperatures, wind erosion, and especially poor agricultural practices. So back in the 30s and 40s, and even 54, when he graduated from Texas Tech, no one was really aware of what caused the Dust Bowl. And it wasn't just the drought, lack of rain, and high temperatures. It was the settlers who came into those areas and plowed up the native plants. And if you've ever seen the chart of native plant root systems, they go very deep into the ground, much more so than other plants and the crops that these settlers were growing. So there was nothing left to hold that soil in place. rains in 1939 ended the Dust Bowl, but we had another serious drought in the 50s when he was graduating from college. And here in Dallas, even White Rock Lake completely dried up and the soil was cracked. You could walk across the bottom of White Rock Lake. So I think he was thinking, you know, this will probably happen again. I need to figure out what's going on and do something about it. We also weren't aware at that time about the importance of crop rotation. So farmers would plant the same crop every year over and over, depleting the soil of all its nutrients. So that was another problem that led to the Dust Bowl. Okay, so after college, Benny went to work. He had planned originally to go to work for his dad, but because the land was so parched and it was impossible, he couldn't help his dad at all. So he went to work for the Texas Research Foundation, which was a private agricultural organization from which he never left. And you're probably thinking, well, wait a minute, didn't he work for A&M? Yes, Texas A&M took over the operations of the Texas Research Foundation. So he worked for the same organization his entire life. Now, they asked him to study cotton root rot. Is anybody familiar with why that would be important? Why would that be important in Texas? Studying. Yeah, financial. Cotton is a very important crop here in Texas. 40% of the cotton in the United States is grown in Texas. So it was very important. So he studied cotton root rot. And because it's a serious fungal disease that's airborne and cannot be reversed, he was bored to tears and very frustrated. This is not what he intended to do with his life, to deal with something that was really difficult and couldn't really be dealt with. Anything that had cotton root rot had to be eliminated and the plant moved to fresh soil. So in his spare time, he began what was really the biggest accomplishment of his life. He began collecting seeds and cuttings of native plants, mostly in West Texas, Trans-Pecos, and even in Hill Country, to see if he could get them to grow here outside of their normal range. Okay, so he knew a few places on the A&M campus, or where they were working, where it wasn't being used. So he took those little plots that he could find and he planted his seeds and got his cuttings started and planted them to see how they would do. Well, he had to guard them with his life because Texas A&M had no interest in native plants at that time. And he was concerned that they would just plow them over and they'd be gone and all of his research would be for naught. Also, Texas A&M is very science oriented, and that wasn't exactly science, just planting some seeds or cuttings to see what would happen. So they had very little respect for what he was doing, but he carried on. Okay, he was also very generous. He would share plants. He would share his knowledge. He wasn't one of the people who said, I'm going to write a paper and that's my intellectual property and nobody else can, deal with it. He was willing to share and he was very humble. He considered himself to be a plant hunter. That's it, just a plant hunter. Okay, so I found a gentleman who worked with him, Dr. Wayne McKay. What a character he is. He is the head of the horticulture department at the University of Arkansas. And somebody else I talked to said do you realize what a big deal that is? Well, I didn't. I still don't really know why that's such a big deal, but that's who he is. But a very, very nice man. And he had some really hilarious stories about Benny. So he would go on these hunts. Benny never went plant hunting by himself. He always had somebody, usually somebody to drive, because he was looking and he could recognize something different just driving down the road. He knew so much about plants, he could recognize something different. And Dr. McKay told me that Benny would get up early before the sun was up, pack his lunch, his camera, load up the truck, and hit the road. He always wore his straw hat. And Dr. McKay told me the story about that straw hat. And I kind of figured Benny, I hadn't read anything about his being married or having a family. And after I heard this story, I was pretty sure he didn't ever marry. His straw hat got so dirty and nasty that he told Dr. McKay one day, I'm going to have to get this hat cleaned. So he went home and threw it in the washing machine. And yeah, and when it was done, it was nothing but a pile of straw. So he had to go buy a new hat. But, and as Janet said, when you work for A&M, you don't have much money. So, I mean, he was really trying to conserve his money by not having to buy a new hat. Okay, so someone else, and I can't remember who it was, but was on one of these plant hunts. And driving along, Benny would just yell, stop the truck. And whoever was driving, or if he was driving, would jam on the brakes. And those were the days before seatbelts. So they said, you know, we can't even tell you how many times we felt like we were going to go right through the windshield because he saw something. So that was an interesting story. He had a lot of connections, you know, people that he knew all over the state. So he was able to have access to places that the public would not have access to. And as you know, well, you may not know, but 95% of the land in Texas is privately owned. So you can't just go out and explore because you're probably trespassing on somebody's property. And, you know, people in Texas have guns and stuff. Okay, but he knew people. And he had a lot of connections. And often they were on really rough roads. This is according to Dr. McKay. Really rough roads. And they would come to a locked gate sometimes. So they came to a locked gate one day. And Benny looked at Dr. McKay, who was significantly younger, and said, well, we brought you. And we knew we'd need you someday. We need somebody young who can walk the 7 miles to the ranch house to get somebody to come out here and unlock this gate. So, so that was Dr. McKay's role, to be the young guy who could walk to figure out how to get the gate unlocked. I thought that was a great story. One day they were driving and Benny had the truck stop because he saw a tree. I don't know what kind of tree it was, but he noticed a tree, this lone tree all by itself sitting out there. And he was really curious about that. And he didn't want to assume anything. And he noticed that beyond where this one lone tree was, there was a hill of some kind. And he thought, I have to just go walk over that hill and see what's on the other side. And because I can't assume this tree is just an errant tree in the middle of nothing. So he went over the hill and discovered, lo and behold, here's a whole forest of these trees. So, you know, he didn't assume anything. He wanted to check it out. He really did. He was an amazing plant hunter. And he would plant hunt all day. until the sun went down. In the 70s, Benny specifically sought out hardy, drought-resistant plants for home and office landscapes. So he really wanted to get the plants that were successful outside their range here in this area and elsewhere, to be used in landscaping both homes and office buildings. And his research led to some wild species, wild meaning wild, not wild and crazy, to be introduced into commercial production. And those include, some of them that were included there are desert willows, beautiful tree. I have one in my backyard. False indigo, we have that in the Benny Garden at Texas Discovery Gardens. Texas sage, which you see everywhere, and mountain sage. I don't really know what mountain sage is, but anyway. These plants are still available today in this area, and we can credit Benny with bringing those to our attention. Okay, Benny also was friends with a gentleman named Carroll Abbott of Kerrville, and he was an expert on Texas wildflowers. And Abbott founded NPSoT in 1981, along with Benny and other folks. And do you all know Sally and Andy Wasowski's big book of native Texas plants? I mean, I love that book. Sally was a social worker at the time, and she went to hear Benny speak, presumably at a NPSoT meeting, and she immediately joined and became, interested in native plants and all that, and wrote that book on Texas native plants and other native gardening books. And according to Sally, Benny changed her entire life. He really changed her life. And Abbott, this was interesting too, he lobbied the Texas legislature to make the 4th Saturday in April Texas Wildflower Day. And this year, Texas Wildflower Day, the 4th Saturday, will be Earth Day. And I talked to a friend in Waxahachie who said, oh my gosh, the bluebonnets this year are absolutely incredible. And the Ellis County town of Ennis has their bluebonnet trails, excuse me, and they are peaking now. So this, if you want a little field trip down to Ellis County, that's a wonderful trail to take. You can drive it and see absolutely amazing numbers of bluebonnets. And Benny was way ahead of his time. And I can remember in 2007, when I became a master gardener, I gave a lot of talks. I gave the first talk in Spanish on saving water, water-wise gardening, because we knew we had, even then, an issue with a lot of people and not enough water, and no new water sources being introduced. And we still don't. And Benny in 1993, in an interview with the Dallas Morning News, said, quote, "It's getting to be important that we save as much water as we can and grow the kinds of plants that can survive on very little when they have to. The one thing that Texas doesn't have and never has had and never will have is enough water." And that's what's true then, and it is still true today. And I think we all see how much water is wasted with sprinkler systems and other things. He was right, and we could be headed for very serious problems. So it's important that we get the information out to the public that they need to be using drought-resistant plants, native plants, and maybe consider not even having sprinklers, automatic sprinklers. Okay. At the end of his life, as I said in the beginning, he considered himself just a simple plant hunter, nothing more. But at the end of his life, he was considered a pioneer, a visionary, and a scientific explorer. So he came a long way, very humbly, and just, I wish I had known him because he sounds like just such a neat person to know. In June of 1996, he was honored by the Texas Horticulture Center, which is now Texas Discovery Gardens, with the dedication of the Benny Simpson native plant collection. So Tina, what, yeah, that's the one. Tina D. She worked with Benny. Benny was planning for his retirement at that point, and he had his collection up at the research center up on Coit, and he decided to give plants to Texas Discovery Gardens and the Herd Museum. And Tina met with Benny, and they selected the plants that he was willing to give to Texas Discovery Gardens. And she supervised the installation of the Benny Simpson garden at Texas Discovery Gardens. And what she did, which I didn't realize, she took those plants and arranged them in order of where they were originally found. So there's a section of the Benny Simpson garden that has plants from Hill Country, and a section that has the plants from far West Texas and Trans-Pecos and different areas of Texas. So that's kind of cool. The plants that they could dig up and pot, they did, and moved them down to Discovery Gardens. And they had some trees, and the trees were from 20 to 80 feet tall. And they balled and burlapped those trees and had a professional plant moving company bring those down to Discovery Gardens. So that was quite a feat of engineering and all kinds of things to get that accomplished. Okay, the plants at the, well, hold on. So, yeah, so you can come to Texas Discovery Gardens. The Benny Simpson garden is around the greenhouses. So it starts inside the gardens and then moves outside the gate and goes all the way around to behind the greenhouses. And that portion is mostly plants that like lots and lots of sun. So most of the flowering plants are on that backside of the greenhouses. And
you see them as you drive.
exactly, as you come around and go left, right. And so you can see the Benny garden there. The garden that he set up or, donated the plants for the Herd Museum are in front of the museum before you go in. So it's not something that's inside the herd, it's at the entrance. And also up at A&M Research Center on Coit, they have an eco park, which is dedicated to Benny. And I was up there a while ago and there was nothing really to see except trash. So I made myself useful and picked up the trash. Anyway, but that's another place you might want to go see when things are actually, probably now things are beginning to pop up there. So that's another place. Sadly and unexpectedly, Benny died in 1996 at the age of 68. And I say sadly, and well, it is sad, but he, being as humble as he was, he just told everybody he worked with and knew that he had just a little heart, something that he was going to take care of. And he, after his surgery, lapsed into a coma and never recovered and left behind his mom and his two brothers and sister, and many friends and admirers. And I count myself now among the admirers. I mean, he was just an amazing person. I wish I knew him. He experimented for 40 years with more than 500 species. And Dr. McKay has put his photos of plants on 3 different websites that you can visit. You can see his plants, as I said, at the Herd, at Discovery Gardens, and the Eco Park up at the, and it's right with the water education building. Is that what they call it? Anyway, yeah, right there. You can't miss it. There's a big plaque. And so one other thing that, this is silly and y'all are going to think I'm nuts, but anyway, too bad. One thing that Dr. McKay told me that was every day after they did their plant hunting, Benny insisted upon having a chocolate bar, and they couldn't carry chocolate bars in the truck because they didn't have air conditioning. And so every night after the sun went down, they had to search out a general store or a gas station where they could get Benny his chocolate fix of a chocolate bar. So in honor of Benny, I brought little chocolate bars. So here's to Benny. Pass them around till they're gone, please. Don't make me take them. I love chocolate. So that's it. Are there any questions?
Do we have the original layout, landscape plan?
Actually, yes, at Texas Discovery Gardens, we do have that. Carrie has it in her office. And oh, and I need to tell you 2 things. Number 1, I am looking for more volunteers for Tuesdays because we really want to get the Benny Garden looking better than it ever has looked in the past. So we need lots of help because we're still also working on some of the other gardens at Discovery Gardens as well, because they're very short of money and very short gardeners. So anybody who would like to come, we work on Tuesdays from 8 to 12. We take a break at 10 o'clock and meet in the outdoor classroom and have snacks and visit. You can come anytime. You can come at 9 o'clock and leave at 10 o'clock. You can come at 8 o'clock and stay till 12, whatever. So that's Tuesdays. And if you can get a group together of maybe 5 people, I would be willing to work on a Saturday. Not often, but every now and then I would be willing to give up a Saturday. Also, on July 29th, we are going to have the Native Plant Symposium at Texas Discovery Gardens. And Carrie Gray Harrison has got some really good speakers who are coming. And on that day, since we'll have a captive audience, we are going to rededicate 2 things. One is the Benny Simpson native plant collection. So we want the garden all spruced up for July 29th. But we're also going to have the folks who worked on the panel. We have 2 panels on either side of the front door, or the main door to Texas Discovery Gardens. And that was hidden by 2 large palm trees that died in 21 in the big freeze, but stood there for quite some time before we had them removed. When they were removed, it exposed this wonderful, what do you call that? It's like a freeze. Yeah. And it was filthy, dirty. It was black and green, and it was just nasty. So I found out who had installed that and discovered it was not limestone. It was made, and it was not original to the building. It was made in 2007, and it was cast concrete. made by a lovely woman who was pregnant at the time and made the panels in her living room in Richardson. So I would love to meet her because these panels are native plants and insects. And it's been cleaned and it is just beautiful. They have lights that they've always had down near the ground that just light up that panel. It's not bright lights shining all over everywhere. And it's gorgeous. So I would like to bring attention to that as well as the Benny Garden. On the 29th of July is the perfect time since we have people there. So, yes.
The story I always heard was that Benny knew that Texas A&M was going to sell off the property up there at that where he'd done all his research, and he wanted to get plans to places like Discovery so that it wouldn't just be dug up and
Right. Yeah. And he wanted to get that done before he retired. Of course, he never had time to retire. But
After he died, the turf grass program at A&M took a lot of that over.
unfortunately, yeah, what was left. Any questions? Comments? Go ahead.
I wanted to say, when I lived in Austin until 83 and I got to meet Carol Abbott.
Oh, wonderful.
He had written a tiny paperback thing on how to plant Texas native flowers, and his autograph. I had him autographed.
Awesome.
If there's any historical place that could appreciate that, I would consider it.
I don't know. I would think the Lady Bird Johnson, yeah, the Wildflower Center might appreciate something like that. Yeah. Other comments or questions?
I have a question, this is probably for you, Peter. In my mind, and I don't know why I think this, was Benny a really short guy?
Not particularly, but he wasn't very tall either. Intermediate.
My image was he was very short. And I don't know why I think that.
I don't either.
Maybe because Doug Calloway.
Say something. Oh,
Go ahead.
you mentioned Sally and Andy was that. You know, this chapter went dormant for over a year. And so after a while, I get this call from Sally inviting me to dinner with them. So they take me to this restaurant and put the touch on me to revive the chapter.
Mhm.
So I called a meeting, and there were, I'm not going to name any names, but there were some people who, you know, had been giving some of us a hard time with criticism without participating. But called the meeting, and I've said, you know, this chapter went dormant partly because the same four people did all the work,
Mhm.
and everybody else treated it like a TV show. And anyway, we did succeed in reviving the chapter, and so we have Sally and Andy to thank for that.
Excellent.
History about what the garden chapter did and why there's a big sign being dedicated. I don't know the history or background.
That sign was done by Melissa Martin, I believe, and it was donated by the Garland NPSoT chapter, which I don't believe it is in existence anymore, is it? No.
Did they just do the sign? Did they always volunteer back in the day?
No, there was no volunteering. It was just the sign. And that sign has stood the test of time. It's been there ever since I've been there, and that's probably 15 or 20 years.
I'm gonna ask you probably, but I have some photos, your slides. And they were given to me by Greg Brody, but Greg Brody got it from A&M. It was the codes from these slide, plant slides.
Mhm.
And so they are all the plants. You have a whole lot of, I don't know whether they're Benny's slides or, but I think it was when they were doing that, culling out and getting the ones that they were putting into these.
Mhm.
I have them and they're just sitting in my closet in a book.
Well,
Like to give them, when you would appreciate, I mean, somewhere.
The Brit might could take them, because I have a bunch of them that they're orchids from Singapore. And Brit would be interested in them since they're the Botanical Research of Texas. So you might could talk to them about donating.
I don't know if it says it on there. I mean, you know, the slides are just in their pockets. And
Well, somebody might have to research them, but since it is a research center, they might would do that with them.
Yeah, talk to Barney Lips.
yeah, there you go. I'm sure you can you make some phone calls and see who would be interested in those. And I will tell you that I'm going to continue doing research because well, I won't mention names, but we do not know where some of the papers are that had to do with the Benny. We do have the plan, the original plan for planting the garden at Discovery Gardens, but we don't have the other paperwork because when the building itself was renovated, those papers were shipped off somewhere and nobody knows where that somewhere is. So there's more to research, more people to talk to. And so I will probably continue and try to get something put together that will be at Texas Discovery Gardens permanently for anybody who's interested in Benny and his history. Any other comments? Thank you, thank you. Was it informative?